What's an obvious sign someone's American?
Story 1.
I walked into a bar in Australia, ordered a beer, and then the bartender noticed I'm American. I asked, was it the accent or my choice of Budweiser beer? He said, because you're the fattest fuck I've ever seen in my life, mate.
Story 2.
When I lived in Europe, people said only Americans eat while walking. I'd be eating a bagel or something on the way to work or class, and multiple people asked if I was American, lol. My partner's Italian mother absolutely couldn't get over the idea of seeing people walk around holding coffees, especially iced coffee. Long coffees instead of espresso is weird enough, but the idea of sitting at a cafe and not just finishing your coffee before you leave.
Story 3.
I don't know how true it is, but when I was in a hostel in Japan, we met a guy from France, I think. But anywho, at some point he mentioned he could tell we were from the USA. He said it was because we talked loudly, like our normal speaking volume was louder. And now I can't help but notice that sometimes when I speak to someone from a foreign country, I do feel like I talk louder than them. I would be absolutely fascinated to read study about how this came about. There's bound to be some absolutely boring but logical reasons you guys developed a louder talking volume than most other nationalities. Dundee in Scotland has a really odd inflection where they pronounce IA with the same sound as an E in them. Web, Min, Pet, etc. has. I did the tour at the Verdant Works, former jute mill museum, and the guide explained it's because the normal A sound would be drawn out in the factory, so they switched to the E sound, so pi, pe, a, 5, fiv, etc. Always found that fascinating.
Story 4.
From what I've been told by European friends and travelers, our complete and utter lack of an indoor voice. I've lived in America for 25 years, and it still irritates me that instead of lowering their voices in restaurants so everyone can hear, Americans just scream over each other and make their restaurants as loud as clubs.
Story 5.
The gentle grins you give to strangers if you make eye contact with them as you pass by, at least in the Midwest, was not very well received in Germany. I dated a European man here in the U.S. When we walked together, every time I made eye contact with someone on our path, I would smile at them, and they would always smile back. Boyfriend was so confused at all these strangers smiling at me, kept asking if I knew all these people. It was hilarious.
Story 6.
Retail worker here, not living in the U.S. I can generally spot an American because they greet me with, hey, how are you? And since I usually have the standard tired from life retail worker expression at first, I thought they were mocking me, so I didn't know how to react. Took me a while to realize they weren't really expecting an answer, Lamau. Mind you, it might just be my personal experience, but it's happened too many times for it to be a coincidence. Not a coincidence. In the U.S., we're basically trained to have these meaningless, pseudo-friendly interactions with retail workers. If we walk into a store, a worker will greet us and ask how we're doing. The only acceptable reply is, fine, how are you? And then we move on with shopping.
Story 7.
In Salzburg, I went to grab something from the drugstore. As I was checking out, I said hello to the cashier, thinking there was very little difference between how I said it and how Austrians say it. She immediately started to speak to me in English, and I asked her how she knew I spoke English. She deadpan stared me in the eye and goes, hello. I would just about die laughing since I'm a very stereotypical, friendly American that says hello exactly like that. One of my favorite memories from that trip. I'm from Texas, and my junior year in high school, we had a foreign exchange student from Spain at our school. At lunch, she was sitting with some friends on our second day of the new school year, and I walked up to the table and gave my usual, still do this day decades later, greeting, howdy y'all. She lost her shit. Not in a bad way, she was just really surprised. She thought I'd just done that as a joke, cause ha ha, let the European girl know she's really in Texas now. When she figured out I was just genuinely greeting the group with howdy y'all, she lost her shit again with disbelieving laughter.
Story 8.
In my homestay in London, I was told that I was so American for enjoying a piece of cake for breakfast. Not frosted cake, but like a nuts and dried fruit spiced coffee cake kind of thing. Apparently that's exclusively like a 4 p.m. snack, and breakfast is more of a savory meal. That's true. A lot of American breakfast items in my mind are desserts, pancakes, muffins, waffles, etc. Doesn't mean I won't eat them, but it's kind of weird to do so. German here.
Story 9.
How much personal space they give themselves. Americans like at least an arm's length. We're conditioned to fill spaces evenly. I notice when I work delivery, spending lots of quality time in elevators, that for every new person that enters, everybody shuffles to even things out. Similar things play out in social gatherings and bars. Not sure if that's universal or not, but I find it interesting. I think the size of our personal bubbles is because our spaces are generally much larger because we've got the space to build bigger buildings, sidewalks, roads, etc. Might also explain why we're louder, used to filling larger spaces with volume. By contrast, I notice people from East Asia on the other end of the spectrum have seemingly, to me, no concept of personal space and have no problem entering my sacred bubble of personal space. I'd imagine it's due to living in denser conditions.
Story 10.
My wife is Brazilian with Italian heritage. She loves Americans and thinks we are unique. However, we have had the discussion about how we showcase indifference too much on what should have passion, and also how we focus on achievement over simply enjoying the passage of time. That, to us, time is focused on living to work, not working to live.
Story 11.
I've always observed my U.S. friends like to point out stuff while walking and say what it is. We were out walking around Amsterdam recently, and they were like, "Hey, look, it's a smoke shop. Oh, look, a sex shop. Oh, hey, it's a prostitute. Look at the canal. Wow, it's another prostitute. Another canal, etc., etc." It was like watching Netflix with audio descriptions turned on.
Story 12.
A smile on their face for no particular reason, being friendly and encouraging even to strangers. I just came here to comment on the same. I wonder why this is not higher up. Then I realize most comments are probably Americans posting random stereotypical funny things. XD. Anyway, I think this is the biggest tell. People from the USA are just insanely smilier and kinder than the average European. When it comes to approaching strangers, the baseline jolly behavior that they have is what Europeans would have with their family, but not with random people like merchants or baristas, etc. That's why they can come off weird or even rude, especially in Eastern Europe.
Story 13.
One American I've met was a bit stereotypical in some regards. He was on a biking tour from Sweden to Palestine, had an unusual beard, huge white teeth, was extremely friendly and a bit loud. And he literally carried a bucket of peanut butter with him because he said that it was the most efficient way to carry energy for his travel. I was an intern at a software company that just got bought by a huge American company, Warner, I think. And one time some executives were visiting, walked through our office complimenting all the developers loudly and then disappearing again. My general impression of Americans I've met in person is that it's difficult to see what you guys really think and feel because you seem to hide it behind a layer of aggressive cheerfulness. So when I see someone radiating that, I expect them to be from the US.
Story 14.
When I lived in Spain, the barista at Starbucks immediately knew I was American because of how polite I was. I asked him how he knew I was American, and he told me. In Spain, we don't usually respond with good and you. Americans are so polite, whereas Spaniards will just say, "Give me my coffee." So I stopped responding nicely, and baristas wouldn't speak to me in English anymore. Culture clash.
Story 15.
I think they are genuinely friendly people, easy to talk to, accessible, and welcoming. Would love to visit America. There is something quite old-fashioned about the type I'm speaking about. Hospitable, warm, helpful.
Story 16.
Not caring what I wear or look like when I go out. I heard recently that Europeans don't go out of the house in their pajamas. Not sure if that's true or not, but it seems like it would be an American thing not to care if you look like shit.